Good morning, everyone. It's around 10 o'clock on the West Coast, 1 p.m. on the East Coast. We'll just give it another minute or two for people to get signed on, and we'll get going momentarily. Before we get started, I just want to check and make sure, is Patrick Collins on the line?
I am indeed. How are you, Max?
This is Vignesh. I'm doing well.
Hey, Vignesh.
Just wanted to make sure you were on here, and I've got you set up as a panelist. So once we get going, you'll be able to advance slides on your own.
Well, sounds good. I appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Thank you. All right, hello everyone. This is Vignesh Ganapathy with the Every Life Foundation and RDLA, Rare Disease Legislative Advocates. I hope you're all doing well on this wonderful Wednesday morning or afternoon, depending on where you're located. So to get started for today's webinar, we have a fairly full agenda. First, I'll be giving a brief update on Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill, which is coming up in early 2017 in January. And after me, Cheryl Yeager with Williams & Jensen will discuss the Affordable Care Act repeal effort and sort of the alternative plans that are coming down the pipeline, sort of the state of play on that. Patrick Collins, who's with CSL Behring, will give a synopsis on the orphan drug tax credit. Patricia Egan, who many of you have heard from on previous calls, will discuss the Lymphedema Treatment Act and the state of play surrounding that bill. Jennifer Knapp with Adrenal Insufficiency United and Darlene Shelton with Danny's Dose will be discussing Danny's Dose and Order, which is a rare disease registry concept that they've been working on for some time. And finally, my colleague Max Bronstein will give an update on the push for cures and the goings-on around Capitol Hill. So without further ado, we'll get started with Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. So thank you to all of you who attended our 2016 Rare Disease Week, and it was our most successful one to date. We had over 330 patient advocates registered and over 130 patient organizations represented in DC. Leaders from the FDA and National Institutes of Health participated in a panel at the Legislative Conference, at the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus briefing, and finally we had the new FDA Commissioner, Commissioner Califf, speak at the Lobby Day breakfast. You can find more information on our Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill at that website below at rareadvocates.org/RDW. So for what we have coming up in 2017, this year, Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill will take place between February 27th and March 2nd. And as always, it'll be an opportunity for rare disease patients, caregivers, and other advocates, including physicians, to travel to Washington, D.C. and meet with their members of Congress in order to let them know about the legislative needs of the rare disease community and ways in which regulatory reform and other efforts can help bring treatments to patients. It's free for advocates to attend, and we also offer some number of travel stipends, which I'll get to shortly. The schedule that we have set up, on Monday we'll be having a cocktail reception and film screening, followed by a legislative conference on Tuesday. The legislative conference includes a briefing on how to talk to your member of Congress, how to form your story, gives you an opportunity to review the materials in your packets. That'll include one-sheets on legislation, the Rare Disease Congressional Caucus, and other potential asks that you may have. It's also an opportunity to meet with other people from your region. There'll be many people that may come from the same rare disease community or other individuals that may have similar needs to you, in which case, we hope that you're able to make those connections and, better able to complement each other's stories. That conference will be all day on Tuesday, and on Wednesday, before we do our lobby day and have all of the advocates go to Capitol Hill, we host a lobby day breakfast, which is an opportunity to hear from some prominent people in the rare disease space and to sort of kick off the meeting, the series of meetings that'll be coming down the pipeline. And then that evening, we're hosting a Rare Artist Reception, which will be in the lobby of the Rayburn House Office building. This Rare Artist Reception includes works of art by many rare disease patients from across the country. And on Thursday, we host our Rare Disease Congressional Caucus briefing, which, for those of you who didn't attend last year, is an opportunity for not only people within the rare disease community, but staffers, individuals from industry to get an update on different issues that pertain to the community. Once again, all of our events are free for advocates, but advanced registration is required. So definitely visit rareadvocates.org/RDW, and registration will open on January 4, 2017. So regarding, those of you who may need help getting to DC, in 2016 we awarded more than $55,000 in travel stipends to offset travel expenses for advocates from 39 states as well as Puerto Rico. We're hoping to surpass that this year and really grow our program. Our stipends range from $300 for advocates in Maryland and Virginia to $1,000 for Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. Advocates in other states receive $600. This helps to supplement some of the expenses that you may incur in having to fly out there, find a hotel room, et cetera, et cetera. So we're currently accepting applications for travel stipends for 2017, and the deadline to apply is December 18th, so it's coming up. So for those of you who are interested, please visit the website and try and be prepared for that. If you have any questions on this, we have a webinar that's scheduled for Wednesday, December 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern, and it'll give an overview of the Rare Disease Week events, the travel stipends, and it's an opportunity for all of you to ask questions, in-depth questions. By then, some of our programming will be more fleshed out, and it'll be an opportunity to really let you know what's in store and the process of registration. Registration, once again, as I mentioned, for the webinar is available at rareadvocates.org/RDW. The website's down below right there, so make sure to check it out. Excuse me. And finally, we want to let you know that it's incredibly important for new members of Congress to hear from patients and caregivers in their communities, their constituents, and individuals with rare diseases that may be in their districts. If you can't attend Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill, you can still ensure that Congress hears from you. So we're requesting that you submit patient stories at rareadvocates.org/RDW-old/patient stories. And you can submit your patient story, why legislation is important to you, and educate your member of Congress on the issues that you face, as well as individuals in your lives. The deadline to submit your perspective is February 12th, so you have a little bit of time for that, but we definitely urge you to try and submit them as early as possible. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Cheryl Yeager, who will be discussing the Affordable Care Act repeal effort. Give me just a moment just to make sure she is
I am on the line.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
I'm doing great. So just for background for folks who don't know me on the call, Cheryl Yeager, I work at Williams & Jensen, which is a law firm here in Washington, D.C. The reason that they asked if I could help a little bit in trying to give some more depth and knowledge about what could potentially happen with repeal and replace is because I worked on Capitol Hill during the time that the ACA was passed, and also my last boss was Eric Cantor, who's the previous majority leader, and we actually worked on several replace legislative initiatives that you see the foundation of in some of the Republican policy proposals on the Hill. So having been through the process, I'm hoping I can give you all a little bit of perspective about how the new administration and Congress may tackle what is a very large task of repeal and replace. I think the first thing to think about is we think of these terms, repeal and replace, as sort of one action. And I think that's the fundamental error here. It's definitely not going to be one action. It's going to be a multitude of actions. So there are things that the incoming administration can do that will fundamentally change the direction of ACA. And some of those decisions obviously have not been made yet, as the new president is not sworn in. And we just learned yesterday who the new HHS secretary nominee is. So there's a lot of open questions about what the Trump administration will do administratively. But there are a variety of things that they could do right away that would change the dynamics of how the law would be implemented and promoted. So let's put that in sort of into one bucket, the executive branch. The second piece is the piece, of course, that I'm most familiar with, which is Congress. What are the options presented to Congress, and how do they get this done? And I think in this piece, you need to remember back to how the ACA was originally passed, which the ACA was originally passed using a complicated budget maneuver called budget reconciliation. And that's where I believe Republicans will need to go as well, because that requires a different vote threshold in the Senate than moving a traditional piece of legislation that requires over 60 votes. Budget reconciliation only requires 51. And because Republicans have 51 votes, they know on an issue that is largely partisan of repeal, they will likely have to use a vehicle like budget reconciliation to get the process started. So what do we know about what can move in budget reconciliation? Just as when ACA was passed originally, there were two separate vehicles that moved the entire law. There was a standalone bill as well as major changes through the budget reconciliation process. In reverse, you need to think about it that way. There's only certain policy issues that can fly in this budget reconciliation bill, and other policy issues that don't meet the parliamentarian rules of the Senate will have to go in a different legislative vehicle. And that could be one legislative vehicle, like the Democrats did when they passed the law, or it could be multiple legislative vehicles. And that's, I think, very much the fluid dynamic in thinking right now on the Hill is how many vehicles may they use to do this, and how there's the, quote, easier task of repeal, but there's the more complicated task of ACA was already not working. You already had a lot of insurers dropping out of the marketplace, and you had an unstable marketplace moving forward. how do you design an alternative system that provides people with more access to insurance options and insurance that actually meets the coverage that they need. So that's a much more complicated task. I think piling onto that task of the basic sale of insurance through the exchanges is what do you do with states that have expanded Medicaid? And obviously I would expect that to impact many of the folks who are listening in on this call. That's another big open question. There are proposals on different ways to deal with Medicaid, but what do you do with so many states that have expanded versus states that haven't? And when you repeal the law, you need to make sure that there's a transition in place. So we've got the executive branch that's sort of an open question. You've got Congress where you know at least one legislative vehicle that they'll put together, and I should note on that, the Senate voted to repeal ACA in 2015 using budget reconciliation. That bill was, of course, vetoed by President Obama. But there is a bill that has cleared the House and the Senate already on this issue, this Congress, that is sort of a blueprint of sorts, so you can see the pieces in there. The one thing in that bill that everyone likes to overlook, but I think is critical since I've started to already bleed into that, is that you have to have a transition period. Just as ACA wasn't constructed in one day, changing to a new model can't happen overnight. So you need transition period to limit disruption. You've obviously got very different viewpoints about what are ways to regulate the insurance marketplace that provides greater patient choice and coverage. You can see some of those proposals online on Speaker Ryan's website. The policy proposal is called A Better Way, and it's about a 35-page document that outlines some of the concepts that they have for different insurance models. On the Senate side, Senator Hatch has led a process for an alternative plan, and there's many overlapping policy proposals, but you have proposals floating on both the House and the Senate side of Congress that really walk through some of the different ways of thinking through how you design a more comprehensive insurance marketplace. So that's sort of part one. But I think for everybody who's trying to be like, what does this mean for next year, for 2017? It means nothing. The 2017 insurance plans, they've already been written and they've already been approved, and people are already signing up for them right now during the open enrollment period. So ACA, insurance market exchanges, et cetera, will largely stay put for 2017. The question is that many of the insurance plans who compete or are considering competing in the exchanges for the 2018 insurance market, they need to make those decisions early in the year of 2017 about where they're going to, where they'd like to sell products. And so that requires some quick thinking by not only the new administration, but also Congress as to how do you deal with what was a problem prior to the election of stabilization of the marketplace and the insurers pulling out, and rebuilding for 2018 with potentially a slightly different vision. I mentioned already earlier on the phone the same issue with Medicaid states with the expansion. I think it was very interesting that the Trump administration is nominating the Indiana head of Medicaid programs for CMS administrator. I think that sends a strong signal that perhaps some of the reforms that the state of Indiana has implemented are potentially reforms that they could be looking at encouraging other states to move forward with, especially if they do deal with Medicaid reform that is a large portion of a replace conversation. And then the last thing is this question of how do you help patients with pre-existing conditions, which is what all of us on this call are most concerned about. And the Republican policy solution to pre-existing conditions that's distinct and different than guaranteed issue at any time during the year is twofold. One, if you have continuous coverage, Republicans have outlined policy proposals and have voted on policy proposals that an insurer has to grant you continuation of coverage. So long as you have insurance, when you switch jobs, switch something else, you should be automatically covered by your insurance. The issue is, what do you do with folks that wait until they're sick and aren't covered at all? That's the outstanding question. the other part of the pre-existing condition equation in Republican policy proposals is high-risk pools and reinsurance. So the vision is that every state in the country will have some sort of high-risk pool reinsurance model so that will be fully funded, so that patients that have catastrophic needs for coverage will always have insurance coverage. And that's another piece that requires a transition period, because those high-risk pools that existed prior to ACA implementation, most of them no longer exist. And two, many of them that existed prior to ACA passage didn't work well. And so how do you create better structures moving forward, since you are in some ways starting from scratch? So that is a grand overview of some of the big policy concepts that I see in play right now. So takeaways on this. Repeal and replace is not one action. There's several actions the new administration can take that could change the trajectory of the law. We know that Congress will likely use budget reconciliation, but the question is how do they move the rest of the pieces? One legislative vehicle, multiple legislative vehicles, and also, I mean, I personally would note that since ACA was so partisan, is there a way that they can build some bipartisanship on some of these concepts? And then third, to give everybody a little bit of peace of mind, transition periods are absolutely needed to limit disruption, and you need a lot of transition here. So you're not going to see everything sort of blow up in the month of January without people thinking through some transition period. But part of that is complicated by the fact that the existing law prior to the election, prior to any new president taking office, already had significant stabilization problems. So it's not an easy task for either party to address right now. And with that, is that helpful for me to sort of end, or if there's things that you thought I left out that we could highlight and maybe move forward from there?
No, that sounds great. I will, you know, if you're available for a couple of questions, I can open up the lines now.
Sure.
Would that be all right? Here, let me. The lines are now unmuted, so if any of you have any questions, ask away.
Yes, hi, this is Janice Regazzo.
Hey, Janice.
Hello?
What's your question?
Hi. Yes, I just want to, so understanding what you said as far as that pre-existing conditions going into the new presidency, they're not going to repeal that. It's going to stay on the books, and there is a pool, you're saying, of monies in case that patient would need it in case they face catastrophic billings. Is that correct, or is there going to be a change to that?
So there will be a change from how the guaranteed issue provisions work under the current ACA law, but all of the Republican proposals have different policies that address patients with pre-existing conditions to make sure that they always have access to coverage. So the difference with the Republican proposals is that you have guaranteed issue if you have continuous coverage, but then trying to encourage people to constantly maintain healthcare coverage, but you would have a high-risk pool as your backup, or a reinsurance program. It doesn't necessarily have to be a high-risk pool. They're also the reinsurance program, so you always would have access. And I like to make that distinctive from the existing high-risk program pools that people were familiar with prior to the ACA, because the Republican vision for those are far more robust than the sort of minimum level pools that existed prior to the ACA. Does that clarify it? So they're not exactly the same, but that answers the issue of that initial question of, which is the heart of the reforms, is how do you help patients with pre-existing conditions? There are policies in there.
I just have a continuation of that question. So if I switch jobs, then it's a completely different, so I'm going from Blue Cross to Aetna, they still have to take me?
The policy proposal that the House Republicans voted on during the ACA debate, yes.
Okay.
So obviously nobody's drafted anything right now, so I'm speaking sort of
right. I know.
But yes, the policy concept is yes. That switching jobs doesn't mean that you are somehow, blocked from insurance.
Okay.
Or a life change, like getting married or things like that.
Or like moving from state to state?
Exactly. Those things. What they're trying to avoid, though, is that it's this idea of where you can go bare and have no coverage at all, and then when you're really sick, that's when you have to have insurance. But trying to encourage people to maintain insurance across the board.
Real quick, I can hear that someone is typing. If you could please mute your phone on your end, it would help us out a little bit with ensuring that there isn't too much noise on the call. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Cheryl?
And again, please know this is all very fluid, but happy to do, if you all send questions through RDLA or Every Life, I can do my best to try to answer them. And if there are things that you saw now that we've had ACA implemented that you think should be translated, or certain issues that the new leadership needs to think through when they're coming up with these alternative proposals, I think that would be helpful for people to hear.
Cheryl,
but
I
think
have
some
one
of
question.
the core, sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. My name is Amy Cherstrom. I just have a real quick question about lifetime maximums. Is there any discussion about lifetime maximums in the policy proposals at this point?
Yes, the Better Way proposal bans lifetime limits, lifetime caps for insurance companies.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So that's another good question and good example where there actually are some policy concepts that overlap between the two parties.
Okay, great. Thanks for the answer.
You're welcome.
Hi, I have a question. This is Mary Kavanaugh. My question is, what about annual maximums?
So there are some proposals that take away the cap on annual limits, and there's some that do not. So I think that is one that's more fluid conversation.
Okay. And my other question is...
there's agreement on lifetime. There's a little bit of a conversation still ongoing about annual caps.
Okay. And my other question is, going from a group plan to an individual insurance health plan, is it still the same with pre-existing conditions, that as long as you have continuous coverage, there wouldn't be a problem?
That's my understanding of the concept behind the previous Republican legislation on this idea.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. I've got one more question before we move on to the next speaker. Patricia Egan asked in the chat box, you discussed ACA and Medicaid. What about Medicare, which recipients pay a monthly premium adjusted per IRS AGI to receive?
So I don't believe that Medicare is going to substantially change. The policy provisions on Medicare that are in the ACA that people have a lot of concern about, like the Medicare IPAB board or CMMI, and the agency's ability to sort of take executive action on changing the program, those are the policy provisions. If anything, Speaker Ryan in particular has a vision where I don't know the particular circumstance that you're working through, but just as folks can choose drug plans through the Part D program, and you have the opportunity to choose different options for making sure that your plan covers the treatment needs that you need under Medicare, that you could do more of a program like that, where you'd have more options about the type of coverage that you have. But that is, I don't see an immediate change that Congress will be undertaking in the Medicare space.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. And with that, we'll move over to Patrick Collins, who will give an update on the orphan drug tax credit and its status in 2017. Patrick, are you there?
I am here, yes. Thank you.
Okay, I'll pass the keyboard control over to you, right? Actually, hold on just a moment. You should be ready to go.
All right, I'm going to take control here, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be on the call today. Maybe I'll just start with a little bit about CSL Behring. I suspect many of you may not know who we are or what we do. We are a rare disease product manufacturer with a focus on blood plasma therapeutics. So our areas of products for conditions are in the world of bleeding disorders such as hemophilia, primary immunodeficiencies, type of genetic emphysema called alpha-1 deficiency, and hereditary angioedema. The vast majority of the therapies that we have on market are classified as orphan products. And I wanted to take some time today, and I requested and appreciate the ability to be on this call, to talk about the orphan drug tax credit and the possibility of it being eliminated in 2017, and hopefully convincing RDLA that this might be a topic in 2017 to work on in terms of trying to defend. So I will move on, and I've just lost the slides altogether. I'm not sure what happened, Vignesh. I just lost the slides altogether. Do you still see them on your screen?
Yeah, I've got them here. I can just advance them, but are you not seeing them at all?
I'm not seeing them at all. I mean, if you could advance them, I have the copy I sent to you that I'll just call up.
Okay, great. I've advanced onto the brief history.
All right, so I apologize if I'm saying something here that many of you already know. I'll be brief here. But as I'm sure you know, with the orphan drug tax credit, a brief history of it, first 30 million Americans, as we know, suffer from a rare disease. And many investments in terms of products that have been created to treat some of these rare conditions stem directly to the Orphan Drug Act. As we know, prior to the Orphan Drug Act in 1983, there were only 34 drugs that were approved for rare conditions. Since that time, more than 200 have been licensed by FDA specifically for the treatment of rare conditions. A key component within the Orphan Drug Act is the Orphan Drug Tax Credit. So this is a credit that a drug developer can claim for 50% on their qualified clinical trial cost. So once the FDA designates a product that is currently in development as an orphan designation, then from that time forward, up until licensure, the company can claim up to 50% on such a qualified clinical trial cost. And it only makes sense that the lower development cost that a company might have through claiming this credit, the greater opportunities that there are for treatments advancing beyond the research phase, beyond the lab phase. Much work is still to be done. As we know, over 7,000 rare diseases have been identified, but roughly only 300 of those diseases have treatments. But the Orphan Drug Tax Credit provides a specific direct incentive for manufacturers to focus on research and development for rare disease therapies specifically. So I'd ask if you could move to the next slide, please.
Yep.
So this is just a chart that we pulled from an Ernst & Young analysis. Vignesh, I know I shared with you that larger Ernst & Young paper, and I would ask that if you could share with the group and any follow-up email on this. But it's an economic study of the Orphan Drug Tax Credit, and their estimate based on practice to date, based on credits that have been claimed by companies, that they estimate roughly 1/3 of a decrease or a decline in investment in orphan drugs should there be a repeal of the Orphan Drug Tax Credit. So that is substantial when you imagine the orphan drug space. If you just cut out 1/3 of potential investment in that space, you're looking at many conditions that could potentially have products developed going without. If you can move to the next slide, please. Here's another slide that makes that same point. The economic modeling, again, from Ernst & Young here. They forecast out in future years from 2015 to 24 an approximate 1/3 decrease in terms of a potential investment in orphan drug product development if there was not an orphan drug tax credit. You can see the dotted line is what, prior to 2015, what they forecast would have been approved without the credit. The solid line is what was approved with the credit, so what actually was approved. But without the credit, they were able to, using their modeling, determine that you would have seen less products licensed or pursued for licensure, let alone licensed, without the credit. And then that continues out in the future years, roughly 1/3, where you can see in that 2023 calendar year, they forecast the neighborhood of 20 products with the credit being approved for licensure, while it's less than 15 without the credit. So this could be substantial in many of the rare diseases. So the next slide, please. So with that said, the logical question is, could the Orphan Drug Tax Credit eventually be eliminated? The Orphan Drug Act has been in law now for over 30 years. It's universally recognized and accepted as a very successful bipartisan piece of legislation that has allowed for development and for products in rare diseases that otherwise might not have occurred. So why would it be eliminated now when it's working so well? Well, with tax reform being floated and 2017 being a very likely year that if tax reform is going to happen, that 2017 would be the year. They are going to need budget offsets to make up for decreases in taxation. So, for example, President-elect Trump has called for reducing the corporate tax rate from its present 35% in the United States to 15%. So a substantial reduction. Previous tax plans that have been offered in the House of Representatives within the Republican caucus have called for a reduction from 35% to 25%. In fact, I call out a couple. The Dave Camp tax plan. He was the former Speaker of the Ways and Means Committee, and he retired at the end of the 113th Congress. He offered a tax plan in the 113th Congress, or the last Congress. And then in this current Congress that is winding down, the House GOP blueprint, or a better way, as was referenced to earlier, that better way also calls for a reduction in the corporate tax rate, as well as other tax decreases. Across the board, I think you'll see from industry and companies, both in product manufacturing as well as elsewhere, great receptivity to the idea of decreasing the corporate tax rate. The belief is that lowering that rate will allow companies that money that would have been paid in tax can be reinvested back into, in our case, product development, et cetera. However, the potential hazard comes up in that as you move forward with a tax plan, will they have to come up with budget savings to offset the potential reduction in the tax base? So both the Camp tax plan and the GOP blueprint, a better way, in reducing that corporate rate from 35% to 25%, and the potential lost revenue that comes up from that, they had to propose eliminating numerous tax credits as well as numerous deductions. One of those tax credits that has been proposed to be eliminated is the Orphan Drug Tax Credit. So that was, the elimination was in both of the plans that have been made reference to. Will this also be a part of an effort in 2017? We do not know. With a Trump presidency and a Republican Congress, there may be a greater likelihood that they will not need offsets, as they will look at the potential for economic growth that would be triggered by tax decreases as a means to make up revenue. But that is still to be determined. But if history is an arbiter, if they do look at offsets to try to make up some of the decreased tax base, the orphan drug tax credit will definitely be on the table. So why is that dangerous? Yes, a lower corporate tax rate would allow companies like ourselves and others to invest more money back into product development. But the orphan tax credit is a unique incentive specifically to develop products that otherwise may go without research and development and without manufacturing. So if you have a lower corporate rate, but you don't have an incentive specifically for rare disease product development, the incentive is still for companies to invest, but it's much more so for your blockbuster type products or your large mass utilization therapies, because they are treated the same way for tax purposes as would be the rare disease products. That, we believe, is of concern because a company coming into this field, the push would likely be for the larger utilized therapies as compared to the rare disease therapies, because you don't have that tax credit, assuming that there would be an effort to eliminate. So in terms of the cost that is brought up, the Joint Committee on Taxation, I mixed up the acronym, it should be JCT, not JTC. The Joint Committee on Taxation estimated $9.1 billion in savings over 10 years in the CAMP tax plan specific to the elimination of the orphan drug tax credit. That would likely be even higher now should there be a 2017 budget assumption for that cost. And if they do go ahead and look at other measures to accrue savings to balance out the overall cost reduction associated with a tax decrease, the orphan credit will almost assuredly be on the table once again. So this is one of many potential offsets that are on the table. So I'd ask if you could move to the next and what I believe is the last slide. How do we protect the orphan drug tax credit? Well, we, CSL Behring, as well as many other companies in the rare disease space, we have partnered with BIO, the Biotechnology Innovation Organization, as well as with NORD, and we've commissioned this Ernst & Young paper that I've made reference to. And NORD has also provided an accompanying paper about the impact directly on patients. And I've shared both of those with Vignesh and asked again that be circulated to the group. But we have been lobbying the Hill throughout this entire session of Congress about the benefits that come with the orphan drug tax credit, why it's important, the success that has occurred because of it, and the potential dangers that would occur in rare disease product development if the orphan drug tax credit was not there. So I think the best way is to educate members of Congress as to the importance of the tax credit, and that should tax reform happen, again, which is likely, that there be a large-scale concerted effort at protecting the orphan drug tax credit. So basically taking a proactive approach in advance of any proposals that would strike it where we have to be reactive. So I'd conclude by saying that tax reform is very likely to happen in 2017 since you have a like-minded president and Congress. And we in the rare disease community, both manufacturers, patients, and patient advocacy groups, all need to make the case as to the benefits of the orphan drug tax credit and why it is important and why it was specifically targeted when it was created for rare disease product development, again, because without it, there's a much greater likelihood that companies would not invest their resources in rare disease product development. So I'd conclude by asking that if RDLA believes it to be the case that this is an important topic, that this become a topic for 2017 for RDLA to lobby on the Hill. So with that, I will conclude. I thank you for your time. I'd be happy to address any questions as best as I can, and again, appreciate your consideration.
Great, thank you, Patrick. Unfortunately, we're running just a little bit behind, so we're going to ask that if anyone has any questions, to feel free to email them to me on the same email address that you received your confirmation emails, and I can make sure to forward those questions along to any of our speakers. And with that, I'll move it on to Patricia Egan, who will be giving an update on the Lymphedema Treatment Act.
Thank you so much. So I'm just taking control of my slides here. So I'm kind of going to go, some of you have already seen the basics on this particular legislation. See if I can, basically we provide a Medicare benefit to cover compression materials for the treatment and care of people with lymphedema. I'm going to note that there is no pharmaceutical treatment available to lymphedema patients. I know of one orphan drug that is going through the process that would, we hope will come to market. But right now, there is no pharmaceutical treatment, and this is a concern. So the lymphedema, at least as far as I'm concerned, even though there's nothing available right now, we very much want to support efforts in the pharmaceutical area. We've been in the process of taking this this legislation through a congressional process. There are two things that have come up. One is we were told that people don't support a single disease legislation, and so we had to articulate that lymphedema is a collective term for some 45 rare diseases. And let's see, Biggie, this isn't moving forward. I'm sorry. You could take this to the next slide. I can quickly show you. So we basically came up with an infographic that described all the different rare diseases that fall under the term lymphedema. And we got a good response to this. For example, I have primary lymphedema. That's 10% of all cases of primary. And my type of lymphedema is one of more than 40 in that primary area. You can see the red figures are the primaries. You can see how small that population is. Next slide, please. So we started out in the 114th Congress on a pretty good note, introduced by Congressman Reichert, and then later in the Senate by Senator Cantwell. Next slide, please. And you can see that as of today, we have 258 co-sponsors in the House, 29 in the Senate. I know that there are co-sponsors in the pipeline that just haven't quite showed up yet. We think that we have a fighting chance for a supermajority in the House. So, and we also, a CBO score is under discussion with CMS. So why is this bill not getting to a vote? And we're facing the reality that it probably is not going to make it to a vote in the lame duck session, which means we start all over from scratch in the 115th Congress. The two things that came up were single disease and the lack of a CBO score. But as I met with people on the Hill after the election and during the week when we had the Rare Voice Awards, what came up were profound dissatisfaction with administration, not with what we were proposing, the cost, the need for compression garments, none of that. But it was the first time I had heard from HLAs, both Republicans and Democrats, both House and Senate, that they were dissatisfied that these small bills were coming to Congress, and they felt that they should have been handled administratively, and they were profoundly dissatisfied with the administration. That was, I had never heard that said so forthrightly until we had these meetings. All right, next slide, please. So I just want to thank the Rare Disease Legislative Advocates for supporting the Lymphedema Treatment Act. I know that it's not really on the official list, but everybody has been just great in including us, and I appreciate that. And I also want to thank the Rare Voice Awards for recognizing Nico Jansen, who's with Senator Maria Cantwell's office, as a finalist in the awards. I brought a lot of people from the lymphedema community to the meeting, and I hope to continue to encourage everyone to work together. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, that was a great note to leave it on, you know, it was great seeing you last month at the Rare Voice Awards. With that, I'll move it over to Jennifer Knapp and to Darlene Shelton. Unfortunately, I haven't yet. Let me see whether I can make sure that Darlene's mic is working, if you wouldn't mind giving me just a moment. Darlene, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me? Okay, great.
Yeah. Give me just...
I'm not sure if I'll be able to advance either. It says click mouse to get control, so I don't have a mouse on my computer.
Oh, no. Okay. Well,
anyway.
I can make sure to forward the slides for you, if you'd like.
Okay. So thanks for letting, you know, Darlene and I share what we've been working on together. The first slide just basically talks about our two campaigns, Danny's Dose and Order. And Darlene reached out and found me, and we realized that these two things really go together and are complementary, so we've started working together. And so the next slide talks a little bit about Danny's Dose, and I'll let Darlene tell everybody about that.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for your time today. Basically, our family became part of the rare disease community when our grandson was diagnosed with severe hemophilia B 5 years ago. And through that, we realized, as you can see from the slide, that paramedics and ER doctors have regulations that prohibit them from administering medications that aren't in their possession. As anyone with a rare disease that is required to carry their own medication because it's rare, it's not available, it's needed promptly, realizes that that is a major issue. So after just not being able to really get any movement anywhere from any organizations, our family decided that it was vital and that it was an issue that we needed to take up. So our family actually started it. My grandson is Danny, so it's named after him, and it does not limit to just bleeding disorders. It is for anyone with rare diseases. So far, we're very new. We started in 2015, and we started in Missouri, where we live, and are happy to say that in Missouri we currently have template protocols that are being worked on. We have a bill that is being filed this year, and we also have a committee working on statewide standardized emergency medical orders, which goes along with the order database. Independently, I didn't even know Jennifer then, but you know, it's vital because the paramedic cannot act without a doctor's orders. And so, like she said, this works hand in hand. So we need to raise awareness with our EMS services, with our hospital services, that one, we have a large group of individuals that do carry their own medications. These medications are very likely in many states only available in one hospital, and that prompt treatment is also a vital part. So we need education for our paramedics. We need their regulations changed so that they are free to act. And they all have very adequate training for any medications. These medications are very basic, even though they're life-saving. So that is what we're working on, and we are just starting to branch out to other states now that we've got Missouri under control and have learned a lot and feel like we have a good plan of action to carry on to other states. And Jennifer, I'll give it to you now.
Okay. So a little bit about order. So kind of like Patricia's experience with being told that it was only one disease for her, for the Lymphedema Treatment Act, we tried in Oregon to get some legislation passed for adrenal insufficiency, and that was one of the big pushbacks, is that, well, this is only addressing one condition. Some of the other pushback we got was that legislation shouldn't dictate the practice of medicine, and that anything that an EMT or EMS, physician, ER doctor did needed to come from the patient's physician. And so from that, we got the concept for Orders for Rare Disease Emergency Response, which will be a digital database tool. And we're calling it a tool because, since there are 7,000 rare diseases, no doctor can, understand any of them or all of them. So within our community, the adrenal insufficiency community, treatment delays and mistakes can cause death. And, our injection is only about a $10 injection. So we were trying to find a way to help our community, but also everyone else in the rare disease community. So in Oregon, this 2017 session, this database will be introduced. We're also working in Tennessee and Florida and have some senators interested in introducing that legislation there as well. And so like Darlene said, I think, our two concepts work really well together, because even if there's an order and the EMT can look up what the specific treatment is, they're not going to be able to use that patient's medication unless Danny's dose is also passed. And so in Oregon, we'll probably wrap both of those into one bill. And that would be kind of a state-to-state decision. Some senators and representatives like to have two different bills, some like to have one. And so that's kind of where we are with that. The next slide talks a little bit about how they work together. So again, an EMT can't give a medication unless there's been something passed either within the EMS director or legislatively. And sometimes it may not need to be legislation if the EMS community will go ahead and pass that protocol without it. Sorry, just lost my train of thought there. We're still looking into the database. We'd like to have a database that could be utilized by any state. And so we've been talking with NORD and RDLA and, other people trying to kind of figure out where that would be. One idea is to get a lot of different nonprofits together and write a grant to, someone like the Pew Charitable Trust or some organization like that that might be willing to host the database for us. And so that's one thing we're still looking to figure out. The last slide just basically kind of tells you how to get involved. So either way, if you go to dannysdose.com or order.healthcare, there's information on both of those websites. There's links to get involved. One thing is we have a survey through SurveyMonkey. I'm sorry, the blueprint doesn't come out too great, but we're trying to get some data on delays in treatment or mistakes that may have been made so that we can show Danny's dose and order are both really vital to healthcare and getting people the treatment they need. So if any of you have had any kind of delays in treatment or mistakes that have been made due to your rare disease and physicians not really knowing what to do, if you could fill out that survey, that would be really helpful. Darlene and I can email that to you if the link is, too cumbersome. Both of our emails are there. And Darlene, is there anything else you want to say?
Actually, also just that we're trying to build a bigger, in each state, a strong group of individuals to work together. So just contact to either Jennifer and I saying, hey, we would like to be added to the database to be kept up on what's going on in each state, to be part of the group that's working on issues, because as you all know, more voices are stronger. And so many times, you know, you're asked the question, well, exactly how many people does this affect? And so it's vital that, you know, that we get organized and work together. So that would be my other thing. And by all means, share our information with everyone.
Yeah, and we do also have a Facebook group, you know, for people that are interested in working on it. So that's something we can point you to as well if you can give us the email or contact us through the websites.
Great, thank you, Jennifer and Darlene. Now we will move on to, looks like, okay, there we go, to my colleague Max Bronstein, who will give an update on the goings-on around Capitol Hill.
Thank you, Viggy. I'm going to focus on one thing today because this is actually happening right now, something called the 21st Century Cures Act, which the Every Life Foundation, as well as hundreds of other patient organizations, have been advocating for almost 3 years now. And we are at the point today, literally right now, where the House is debating the bill, and they have slated a floor vote on the legislation that will be carried out later this afternoon. So, you know, for those who, I would hope all of you have heard of this, but if you are new to hearing about cures, this is something that was led by Chairman Upton and Congresswoman DeGette, who are pictured here. And really the point was to do something transformative for patients and for biomedical research. And so they put together something that has been known as the 21st Century Cures Act, and it actually passed the House way back in July in 2015, but unfortunately there was no floor vote in the Senate, so the bill was kind of put on hold for over a year. And then during that time period, and of course before that time period, we had the Every Life Foundation, as well as, again, hundreds of other rare disease organizations and patient organizations, led a huge advocacy campaign that we had several days of action. This was not something that happened over the course of 1 or 2 days, but really went on for the course of 2 years. And that's what it took to get Cures to where it is now. I won't go through all of these, but I think many of you participated in our photo blast campaign, where we had people calling for Cures Now and sending in signs with their states on it. So my thanks to all who've done that. We've done several call alerts over the past couple of years. In the top right, what you're seeing is an ad that we actually ran in Politico a few weeks ago, again, calling on Congress to pass Cures Now. We also made a video that's on YouTube, and if you haven't seen it, it's pretty easy to find. It's been seen by thousands already. So this is, you know, what it took to really kind of move the needle here. So let me just say thank you to all of the patient advocates who stood up for Cures over the past 2 years. I know it's been a long road and a tough fight. And so the new draft is out, and it's being considered today. Here are all of the key things that are in the legislation. Let me go back to this one. So I'll kind of give a quick rundown of what the highlights are. So there's billions in new funding for NIH and hundreds of millions of new funding for FDA, which again is incredibly important. I think everyone on the phone knows how much funding at NIH goes to support rare disease research, as well as translational research through NCATs. The FDA is in need of new funding for a wide variety of reasons, but especially to help kind of modernize drug review there, so that could be very impactful for patients. There's also language in there on biomarker qualification, which is very hard to explain in one bullet point, but basically we see biomarkers as a really important way and pathway for greatly accelerating the speed and cost and decreasing the cost of clinical trials. So through a pathway at FDA called accelerated approval. So we see that as a way of really helping to get more treatments to patients as quickly as possible. There's also language in there that's going to improve how FDA hires new employees and ideally retains them. Many of you probably are aware that the FDA has been struggling to fill a lot of vacancies there, which not only can slow down the drug review process, but can also make it hard to find people with the right expertise in certain rare disease areas. There's also the Expanding Hope Act in there. This is the program that reauthorizes the Priority Review Voucher program until 2020. There's a new program in there to establish a neurological disease surveillance database at the CDC. This, for the first time, would actually start to track neurological conditions across the spectrum. So this would be for all neurological conditions, but they are going to be limited in terms of funding. There is funding for this initiative, but I do believe this will include rare diseases in their tracking. The CURE Act, which I know many folks on the call have been involved, is also in. This is something that would expanded access and early access, so it actually require companies to post points of contact for any requests that come in on early access or expanded access, and it would really just kind of move the needle in terms of ensuring that companies are thinking about this from the outset. And then the patient-focused drug development provision was included as well, which basically helps to enhance patient engagement at the FDA for drug development. And then on top of all of that, if that wasn't enough, we have new funding in there for the President's Precision Medicine Initiative, as well as the Vice President's Cancer Moonshot Initiative, and both of these will be supported through the new funding for NIH. So, you know, this package is absolutely chock full of things that are going to be a real benefit to patients and to researchers and all who really care about the future of biomedical research and the development and treatment of patients and really can do a lot to enhance innovation in our country. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're looking at. Something that's incredibly important to note was that the Open Act was not included in this new draft. For those who might not be familiar with the Open Act, this is a piece of legislation that we think could actually help double the number of treatments available to patients, and it would do that by, for the first time ever, giving companies an incentive to repurpose existing drugs for a rare disease indication. So it would basically be a way for looking at some of the drugs that are used off-label to try to, run a study and get them on-label so that we know, how safe and how effective they are for rare disease patients. This is, the fact that it was dropped is especially disappointing because at the time of this presentation, we have 173 patient organizations who signed on to support the Open Act. So this is a major disappointment. And let me try to address the question of why did this happen? The folks at EveryLife have really been the leads on this, including myself and Vicki and others here, and we have been meeting with folks in Congress for over 2 years, educating them about the Open Act and why off-label use is important and why ideally we'd like to get some of those things on label. But keep in mind, we are doing all of this advocacy in an environment that is not particularly friendly to the biopharmaceutical industry right now. There's been a lot of scandals over the costs of drugs, and as a result, there are certain members of Congress who are pictured here, and it's not just Senator Murray and Senator Warren, but there are several Democrats in the House as well who were resistant to anything that could potentially benefit the industry, regardless of what it would mean for patients, which is really disappointing because what that tells me is we have a lot more work to do with Democrats in particular, educating them about why incentives are so important and critical for boosting innovation for rare disease patients. So, I don't know if you guys saw this, but yesterday, Senator Warren was on the Senate floor and basically launched into what I would call a tirade against the entire industry, as well as off-label use, which was really disappointing because I know for many of you, off-label is really your best and only treatment option right now. So certainly disappointed by her remarks, but what that means is we have a lot more work to do next year and beyond that to get people educated about why this is so important for patients. So looking at the path forward about the larger cures legislation, as I mentioned, the House floor vote is going to happen today. I don't want to guess what the number will be, but I think we will see very strong bipartisan support for the cures bill, so I think it's extremely likely that it will pass the House today in a strong way. We are hearing that the Senate is planning to vote on the bill on Monday. So right now, Senator Warren and some others in the party, including Senator Sanders, are trying to build a coalition to vote down the cures legislation. So if you're in her state or if you're in Washington state with Patty Murray or Senator Sanders' state, I would urge you to write to their offices and tell them that you are very much in favor of supporting the 21st Century Cures Act, and even though it might not be perfect for them, that's no reason to kill the entire bill, which is what they are attempting to do. So assuming that cures does pass the Senate next week, we would expect it to go to the White House very shortly thereafter. So that would mean that cures would actually become law by mid-December. So will probably be one of the last things that President Obama signs as president. So that's what we're looking at for 21st Century Cures. In terms of the Open Act itself, we have 173 orgs who are signed on, so our work will continue in 2017. I will say that one of the things about having a Trump administration is that he will undoubtedly create what I think will be a better environment for discussion about incentives and why incentive policies are important. So, that I think will be on our side. I kind of mentioned this earlier, but getting as many Democrats as possible to understand off-label use, understand the Open Act, and understand that, why rare diseases are special will be incredibly important part of our strategy next year. And then in terms of actual legislative vehicle, for those who aren't familiar, vehicle just means must-pass legislation, something that we could connect the Open Act onto so that it will actually move through Congress. There are lots of vehicles that under the sort of broader healthcare umbrella that will have to be considered next year. So each one of those represents an opportunity for Open to get voted on and ideally passed and ideally signed into law. So PDUFA is one of those. The Children's Health Insurance Program is another, and there are several other possible vehicles that we could utilize next year to really push Open Act over the finish line. So that's where we are. I think we're running a little bit late, but I would like to take a few questions because this is a super timely event, and I'm really excited that we have so many people on the call today. So if anyone has questions about the Open Act or the broader 21st Century Cures legislation, feel free to send them in via the chat function, or I think the lines are open now, so you can ask that way as well.
Hi, Max. This is Teresa Barnes. I wanted to ask, with cures, assuming it's passage today in the House and it's Senate next week, what do you think the first visual impacts we're going to see from that effort?
I think the funding is going to make a big difference for the agencies. Right now, Congress is once they finish with cures, they have to decide how to fund the agencies for 2017. So knowing that the agencies will get some new funding through cures, I think will be really important, and it will be an impact that should be felt quickly at the agencies. And I think many of you are probably advocating for grants or for other things via NIH or elsewhere. So agencies less tight-fisted about that and more forward-thinking on decision-making when they have more certainty around the budget. So I think looking at their budgets for next year, it's likely that they're going to be on a continuing resolution or basically flat funded through a lot of 2017, but the fact that new funding is possible through cures will actually help alleviate some of those strains there. So that, that's probably one of the most visible places that I would expect to see cures impact in the short term, assuming it gets signed into law here.
In Massachusetts, I will be more than happy to contact Senator Warren. What exactly are her objections to this legislation so that I can address that?
Yeah, I would encourage folks to, if you just go into Google and type in 21st century cures and Senator Warren, it'll pull up her House floor speech, her Senate floor speech rather quickly. So I'd encourage you to watch that. I mean, the long and short of it is her view is that this bill has been, quote, hijacked by the biopharmaceutical industry, which is not true because, as many of you are aware, there were over 700 patient organizations who signed on in support of 21st century cures and continue to support it. So, that's part of it, and part of Warren's kind of speech, as well as Senator Sanders, has really been attacking the entire industry without any hesitation or nuance in their remarks about the benefits of medical research or innovation, or why we need to think about rare diseases a little differently than we think about larger kind of diseases in general. So, that's been a big part of her concern, and I think the other part is just largely political. I mean, the Republicans are pretty much in control of Congress right now, so this is going to be a win for them, even though this is largely bipartisan legislation. I think she's still concerned that this is something that is going to make the Republicans look good, which for the Democratic Party is not a great thing right now, just purely from a political perspective. So I think all of those things are part of the dynamic here, and I mean, it's especially challenging with Senator Warren because if you look at the state of Massachusetts, there's hundreds of patient groups there, hundreds of really incredible biopharmaceutical companies that are doing amazing and innovative work there.
How does letting babies die make the Democrats look good? Like, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of this is politics. I'm not going to be able to explain all of her reasoning here, but in addition to that, we did see her sending out emails, really using this as kind of a fundraising platform for her campaign as well. So, if you guys agree with her on this, especially if you live in Massachusetts or if you have members of your organizations that live in Massachusetts, she needs to hear from you guys and know that what she's doing is misguided.
Hi, my name's Sarah, and I'm in Washington State. I've been calling Senator Murray and writing letters urging both open acts and cures, and I've found the same resistance with her as well, her relating it back to pharmaceutical companies not needing incentives or to line their pockets. And so I'm wondering how I can effectively kind of persuade her, if there's anything else I can do beyond calling and writing.
Well, first of all, thank you for reaching out and for working with Senator Warren's office.
Murray's.
Oh, sorry, Senator Murray's. I've just been talking about Warren all day.
Right. They both, yeah.
Yeah, we've been working with their office for a long time. I think they're actually more movable on this than Senator Warren's office.
That might be good.
Yeah, so what I would recommend doing is actually requesting an in-person meeting, whether it's in the district or if you're in D.C. You can definitely meet with them in D.C. as well. In general, I think in-person meetings are the best way to have an impact with an office. Certainly calls and emails.
We tried doing that over the summer, the RDLA patient advocates, and I had a meeting with her staff for about 6 hours, but she did not show up, unfortunately, so we didn't get that same impact I felt.
Yeah, it can be tough to nail down a member, but when they are back in district, they often do kind of town hall meetings, which are public events. So that's another opportunity for you to engage with them. At the town hall, they're public forums, and they allow for open Q&A. So, that would be a great time to pose a question and to make some of the points that we know are so important to for a lot of patients, this has nothing to do with profits. This is about getting treatments for diseases that currently have none.
Exactly.
Using
I did not recognize that as a valid entry.
Hey, Max, this is Stephanie. I had another suggestion. If folks have family members or close friends or other advocates, the more calls a Senate office gets, the harder it is to ignore them. So there is something to be said, even if the person who answers the phone is the legislative assistant or the staff assistant who's front lines on the phones, the more calls they get, the more likely it is that they'll have to really think through it more. So if they, getting 15 calls a day does make more of an impact than getting 2 calls a day.
Sure, and for more people, I imagine.
Exactly. So to anyone that you can activate with a few key talking points, because if someone calls, they're not going to be grilled on the bill. Just a few key points. Right. It's vital for patients. This is a patient-driven initiative. More than 700 patient advocacy groups support it. This is very important to your constituents. Again, just a few key points and let them. They can even call after hours and leave a voicemail, or they could send in an email. Right. Just volume can make a difference.
Great. Okay. Is it still helpful to personalize it and use our own stories in that message with them? And saying how much this would personally affect us with our rare diseases? Yeah. Oh, great. Okay, I'll continue to do that with my speaking with them and not just focusing on how important it is, being as personable as I can.
I think that helps take the focus away from this as an industry-given bill. I mean, that's wrong. So when you can really say, as a rare disease patient, as the mother of a patient, as my family member has a rare disease, and this legislation could really make a difference. I think that would really
I'm advocating for myself, actually, so it tends to help I feel in my benefit in that conversation to be able to say, this is why it would really directly impact me and the 500 people that are in my support group for this rare disease at University of Washington that aren't able to be here because they haven't had the surgeries I've had. So
that's perfect. That really, again, I think if I was a staff member on Capitol Hill, something like that really catch my attention because, hey, that could be me. That could be my family member.
Exactly. Okay, great. Oh, thank you so much for your advice. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for taking action.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to do it. Happy to do so.
Great. Any other questions before we wrap up here?
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's call. Once again, I wasn't able to include time for question and answer for many of the panelists, so I urge you all to please send an email over to me. I can forward it along to either Patricia or to Darlene or to Jennifer or to Patrick on their presentations. My email address is on the screen. It's vganapathy@everylifefoundation.org. You can also always feel free to contact us here at the office. And let you know that our next webinar conference call is scheduled for next month, December 14th. So stay abreast of any communication we'll have on that. They'll be coming up, and we look forward to talking with you then.